then she's also from across the street.
In November 1998, an 8-year-old girl vanished from her quiet Jacksonville neighborhood. For 7 days, her family searched, her neighbors prayed, and police combed every inch of the streets, but the truth was hiding just a few feet away. Beneath a teenager's waterbed, detectives would find the unthinkable and uncover a story so twisted it would shatter the illusion of innocence forever. This is the disturbing case of Josh Phillips. In the quiet Jacksonville suburb of Lakewood, November 1998 was supposed to be like any other fall month. School buses groaning down tree-lined streets, leaves crunching under bicycle tires, and kids playing until the streetlights blinked on. But on the afternoon of November 3rd, that fragile normality cracked. 8-year-old Maddie Clifton, a bright, smiling girl who loved baseball and couldn't stand being indoors for too long, vanished somewhere between her front door and the neighbor's house. She had been playing outside, laughing, running, knocking on doors to see who could come out and join her. By 5 o'clock p.m., she hadn't come home. By 6 o'clock, her mother was calling her name in rising panic. By 8 o'clock, the neighborhood was a living search party. Porch lights on, voices carrying through the air, flashlights slicing through bushes, strangers and friends alike combing yards and vacant lots. The police arrived, taking statements, marking maps, trying to create a timeline. Nobody knew it yet, but Maddie's final steps had taken her to the home of the boy who lived across the street, 14-year-old Josh Phillips, a kid with a wide smile, an interest in video games, and, according to everyone who knew him, nothing in his character that suggested he could be dangerous. His parents described him as polite, quiet, not one for trouble. In those early days of the search, Josh even joined the hunt for Maddie, walking alongside adults, handing out tea flyers, asking other kids if they'd seen her. But inside Josh's bedroom, beneath the blue comforter of his bed, hidden in the waterbed frame, lay a secret so grotesque that the entire community, and eventually the country, would struggle to understand how it could have been born from a child. Maddie's disappearance became a citywide priority. Missing posters papered telephone poles, her smiling face printed on every local news broadcast, her story carried on the front page of the paper. Police conducted door-to-door sweeps, searching garages, sheds, crawl spaces. They even visited the Phillips home. Josh's father answered the door, and the officers asked if they could take a quick look around. He allowed them inside, but at the time, Josh's mother was away on business, and the officers, perhaps sensing nothing amiss, didn't inspect Josh's room too closely. They certainly didn't think to open the waterbed frame. Days passed with no sign of Maddie. Tips came in, were chased down, and fizzled out. Neighbors spoke in whispers now, the air in Lakewood heavy with the kind of dread that makes people triple-check their locks and keep their kids within sight. Then, on November 10th, a week after Maddie had last been seen, Josh's mother, Melissa Phillips, came home. She had been away on a work trip in Georgia, and upon returning, she noticed a strange, foul odor in her son's room. She assumed it was coming from dirty laundry or old food. But when she began to clean, she saw something that made her freeze. A wet stain seeping through the side of the waterbed. She opened the frame, and there, stuffed inside, wrapped in bedding, was the body of Maddie Clifton. She screamed, called 911, and within minutes, police swarmed the house. Josh, who had been at school, was pulled from class and taken into custody. The truth, when it began to emerge, didn't come out in a neat confession. Josh T., old police that Maddie had come over to play, they had been outside hitting a baseball back and forth, and at one point he said, he hit the ball and struck her in the eye, causing her to cry. Afraid of getting in trouble with his father, who, Josh claimed, had a temper and didn't allow him to have friends over when his parents weren't home, he panicked. He said he dragged Maddie inside, into his room, trying to quiet her, but his version of quiet spiraled into horror. Police listened as Josh admitted to striking her with a baseball bat, then stabbing her multiple times with a knife, not because she was attacking him, but because he feared she would tell someone he had hit her. It wasn't premeditated in the traditional sense. There was no long-laid plan. But the act itself was deliberate, and the concealment was chilling in its calculation. He had hidden her body in the waterbed frame, sleeping just inches above it for an entire week, while the world searched for her. Neighbors who had known Josh since he was small were stunned. Teachers who had seen him in class just days earlier couldn't reconcile the quiet, polite boy with the brutality described in the arrest report. But the evidence was undeniable. The baseball bat, the knife, the stains in the carpet, the marks inside the waterbed frame. At just 14 years old, Josh Phillips was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Florida law dictated that for such a charge, even a minor would be tried as an adult. The trial that followed was not only about what happened in Josh's bedroom that afternoon, it was about who Josh Phillips really was. The prosecution painted him as cold, calculated, capable of hiding a terrible act for days without remorse. The defense argued that Josh was a scared child, acting out of panic, with no ability to fully understand the weight of what he was doing. But the jury, after hearing the evidence, took just over 2 hours to return a verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence was life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips, it is the sentence of this court that you be confined in prison without the benefit of parole for the rest of your natural life.
For Maddie's family, there was no justice that could match the loss of their daughter. For the community, the case became a haunting reminder that evil doesn't always come from the stranger in the dark alley. It can live across the street, smile at you in the morning, and help you look for what it's already taken. In the years since, Josh has spoken from prison, saying he regrets what he did, that he wishes he could undo it. He's filed appeals, citing his age at the time of the crime, referencing Supreme Court rulings about juvenile sentencing. But the facts remain. On that November afternoon, a split second of panic or rage, or something darker, ended an 8-year-old's life and destroyed 2 families forever. And what makes this story so twisted isn't just the brutality. It's the fact that for a week, everyone searching for Maddie walked right past the house where she lay, hidden in plain sight, under the bed of the boy who had killed her. From the moment Josh Phillips was arrested, the case became more than just a local tragedy. It was a national obsession. True crime shows, newspapers, and nightly news broadcasts replayed the details. A bright November afternoon, a missing child, a killer who was himself barely out of childhood. The courtroom in Jacksonville was small, but every seat was filled when jury selection began in 1999. Reporters jockeyed for position, their camera lenses waiting to catch a glimpse of the boy at the center of it all. Josh entered wearing an oversized dress shirt and a tie, the kind chosen not by him, but by defense attorneys who hoped to soften the image the jury would see. He looked young, because he was, but the crime he was accused of was not softened by his age. The prosecution wasted no time. They laid out the timeline in stark, clinical detail. How Maddie Clifton had walked across the street to the Phillips home, how she was lured inside, how the blows and stabbings were not accidents, but acts committed with intent to silence. They showed photos, blurry enough for public record, but still unbearable for Maddie's family to look at. They called forensic experts who described blood evidence in the carpet fibers, the dimensions of the waterbed frame, the state of decomposition after 7 days. Every fact stripped away the possibility of this being a tragic accident. The defense tried to pull the focus back to Josh's age and immaturity. They brought in witnesses who described him as a quiet kid, shy, never aggressive. They leaned on the story Josh told police, that he panicked, that he feared his father's wrath, that the killing was a chaotic mistake spiraling out of control. But the jury kept coming back to one thing: the concealment. This wasn't a boy who had run for help or confessed in fear. This was someone who for an entire week had eaten, slept, and lived just feet above the body of the girl everyone was searching for. The verdict came swiftly, guilty of first-degree murder, and the sentence followed just as fast. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Josh, it meant he would enter the Florida prison system as a teenager and remain there until he died. In the early years behind bars, he kept to himself. Inmates who knew his case had mixed reactions. Some saw him as a child thrown to the wolves, others as a cold-blooded killer who deserved no sympathy. Over time, Josh adjusted to prison life, earning a GED, keeping a spotless disciplinary record, and even mentoring younger inmates. His supporters, few but vocal, began to argue that his transformation showed he was not beyond redemption. In 2012, the legal landscape shifted. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life without parole for juveniles was unconstitutional, citing the need to consider a child's capacity for change. Suddenly, Josh's case was back in motion. His lawyers filed for a resentencing hearing, hoping the court would acknowledge his age at the time of the crime and give him a chance at eventual release. Maddie's family opposed it fiercely. To them, nothing about the crime suggested he deserved freedom. Not then, not decades from now. In 2017, Josh returned to court, older now, his boyish face replaced by the sharper features of a man who had spent more than half his life behind bars. He spoke about remorse, about the years spent reflecting on his actions, about wishing he could undo that day. But the prosecution reminded the court of the brutality, the concealment, the sheer amount of violence inflicted on an 8-year-old. The judge, after hearing both sides, reimposed the life sentence, but this time with a faint sliver of possibility: parole after 40 years. It meant that Josh could, in theory, walk free in his 50s, though nothing was guaranteed. For Maddie's family, the hearing reopened wounds they had spent years trying to scar over. For Josh's supporters, it was proof that even in the darkest cases, the law now recognized the possibility, if not the certainty, of change. But no legal argument could erase the image that haunted the Lakewood neighborhood. The flyers stapled to telephone poles, the search parties combing the streets, and the reality that Maddie Clifton had been just a few feet away the whole time. Today, Josh Phillips remains in prison. He works, studies, reads, building a life of routine in a place where days bleed into each other. Maddie's parents still live with the absence that began on that November afternoon, an absence no parole hearing could ever fill. And the story of Josh Phillips, the boy who killed his neighbor, remains one of the most twisted and unsettling in true crime, not because it was the most brutal or the most elaborate, but because it shattered the comforting illusion that evil has an age limit.